Creek. Welcome and thanks for joining us. We're pretty excited because we just found out from Access Vision that this is our 2-year anniversary. We're on episode number 24, which is really fitting because for this show we kind of wanted to do a state of our community. Of course, just based on Co-op's opinion and what we're seeing in trends with our families. So welcome and thank you for joining us. I think the first thing that we want to talk about, because it's big on everybody's mind and it's something that we face as a challenge every day at Women's Co-op when we're serving these families, is the mental health epidemic. So I know that we did a show earlier in the year about this, and the conclusion that we came to is that with the new crisis center, that nobody really has to go without services, that it may take you a while to make the connections, but at least there was an answer to the crisis at that point. They had a crisis team that was going out, and they had a crisis center. But I think that what we saw past that was that kind of low level with our members. If they're not really in a crisis, so to speak, but they just need marriage counseling, or they just need substance abuse or domestic violence classes or whatever it was that they needed, it took a really long time to go through the channels and get connected. And if they had Medicaid insurance, that could sometimes be a barrier, an issue, because there are different, what would you call it, like
different providers.
Providers, yeah, exactly. Thanks, Val. Providers underneath that insurance, and depending on what provider you had, you might not be able to be seen. Like, for example, one of the issues that we seen was that someone who had Medicaid insurance was being seen at Comforts of Home, and then they wanted to add marriage counseling on a different day with a different counselor. So they needed to use the significant other's insurance, and their insurance was not accepted at Comforts of Home. And so they literally had to split up the therapy that they were getting, and I think it took, 3 months for them to be able, a lot can happen in 3 months.
Right.
Kayla, you did a lot of digging for this subject. What can you tell us?
So the data that I pulled, this is from a study that was done in 2019, but it's the Calhoun County Community Health Needs Assessment for 2022. This is the report that they did on those, the data that they collected. And from 2019, 36.87% of people in Calhoun County said that the most urgent quality of life issue to address in our county is to access affordable health services. Because I think a lot of the people we're seeing with Medicaid is finding the provider that they can go to, and then adding those other layers of transportation, time, those things to get to those certain places, and whether or not they're on the bus route. There's so many layers for people in poverty to get those health services.
And we heard a lot from our participants that in some of the providers, which we're not going to name because we're not into doing that, but there are some local providers where clients of Medicaid can get their insurance accepted, but then they are treated as if they are a person in poverty. They feel spoke down to. They feel like they're not listened to when they're discussing their health issues.
Yeah.
They feel like oftentimes, even though this might not be the case, but their health behaviors are blamed for their health issues and not so much respected, because, well, if you're going to have the behavior that causes these health issues, then, and there's a lot of things to consider and unpack there, I think.
Yeah.
And then I think it was that people were limited to who they could choose as providers.
Right.
Like, I am going to name a provider today, but only because it's my provider, and only to say that they're absolutely amazing and wonderful. I go to Day One, and I absolutely love the services that I get there. Like, love, love, love the services. And love the way that, I'm respected by my provider. Like, yes, there is this preventative stuff, and there is this, list with boxes that we need to check for your care, but I'm also allowed to discuss and negotiate all that stuff.
Right.
For example, the colonoscopy, like, I'm not getting one of those right now. But such is not the case for all these local providers, and not everybody's having a really good experience with it.
Yeah, not everybody is, and that's why in this needs assessment that's done for Calhoun County, Battle Creek being one of the largest cities, they have like 8 prioritized health topics. And of the 8, the first one is behavioral health, mental disorders, behavioral health, alcohol and drug use, because from those, that being topic number 1, those lead to, weight status, unstable housing, language barriers, cost and unemployment, decline in health, crime, nutrition, wellness, and lifestyle. So I think that it makes sense with all the statistics that would rate number 1 because of everything that they lead to and contribute to, and how important it is to make sure that we are addressing that in our city and making it available more widely and more accepted, because I think a lot of people in poverty are facing so many things. The last thing they need is to walk in somewhere and finally get there and make it and look to speak to somebody about it and be treated less than.
Right.
Yeah. So.
And I think we find that a lot with our clients because they will tell you what's wrong with them. And if they feel like there's that trust and they feel like that there's that open line of communication, they'll have those conversations with you. But if you get to someone and they're like, oh, you're on Medicaid? Just a minute, have a seat. The stigmatism that comes along with that is already in their mind, and now it's being really played out for them in real time. And I think that stops a lot of our folks from seeking the attention of medical professionals that they need because they don't like the stigmatism that comes with it.
Right.
And I think that that's wrong on so many levels too, because, hey, look, folks, I pay for my health insurance at Women's Co-op. I have a good plan. We have Blue Cross Blue Shield. Great, right? But that doesn't mean that someone who works at another job that does not provide insurance and gets Medicaid for that reason because they're low income enough to qualify, they're working too. So that Medicaid is not like a free handout. And even if you're not working and you're getting Medicaid, everybody has a right to health insurance and health coverage.
Right, because another statistic, 59.64% of Battle Creek lives under the poverty line, being mostly women. And furthermore, mostly from ages 0 to 6. So I think that's really, really...
So they're saying 60% nearly of Battle Creek lives in poverty.
Wow.
60%.
That's a lot of people.
That's a lot of people.
It's a lot of people on Medicaid. And I think...
So you would think that we would have more providers who took it.
More
Right.
access.
Like dentistry,
Oh,
that
man.
is huge.
Huge.
And yes, we do have some, again, local providers who will address that issue if you're on Medicaid. The problem is getting in. And if you ever had a toothache and wanted to get into the dentist, do you really want someone to tell you it's going to be 6 weeks? Getting a tooth cleaning is one thing. I'm going to get my teeth cleaned. I can wait to get an appointment. But if I have an issue going on right now, my little grandson, their family gets Medicaid because they're low income, family of 4. And my little grandson fell down, tragic, had an accident getting out of the bathtub, slides across the tile floor, falls down, and busts his tooth in half in the front. And in order to get a dentist that took their insurance that could fix it, they had to drive all the way to Grand Rapids.
Yeah.
And I think, okay, so this little family that I'm speaking of, they had the means to be able to do that. But how many people in our population don't have a ride to
And
Grand
if it's
Rapids?
an emergency and you need transportation, call the number on the back of your Medicaid card and they will get you transportation. Okay, but what if it's an emergency and I need to go today? I can't call that number and get a ride today. You have to give them at least 3 business days in order to be able to do that. And a lot of our folks can't wait that long, or even if they can wait that long, the emergency that they have needs to be dealt with right away. So, if you don't have transportation, I know for a while, if they had to have some type of, in dentistry, some type of oral surgery type thing, they were sending them to either Muskegon or to Ann Arbor. And who's got the means to get there,
Right.
just the drama of driving to Ann Arbor is enough.
Or like my mother-in-law, who's 84 years old and had to have an eye surgery for her cataracts, and because of her insurance, she had to go all the way to Jackson to
Yep.
get the surgery. And I understand that sometimes it just might be that we don't have those types of providers in Battle Creek, and okay, we understand that because Battle Creek is not the hugest of cities. So you get all these factors that play into it. But geez, we're not exactly rural either.
No.
You know,
Right.
we are a city, and it just seems like people should not have to travel that far. And if, in fact, providers know that that's going to be the case, then why aren't we being more proactive and thinking about how families are going to access this instead of simply saying families don't want to access it?
Right.
It's not because they don't want to, it's because they can't.
Yeah.
I think the other thing too, like the emergency room, hugely frustrating to me. I don't go to the emergency room. I have friends who've been at the emergency room or family. And like, again, my provider, day one, you can call them 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, and they will tell you whether or not you need to go to the emergency room because they'll assess it. And if it's not, an emergency issue that they think needs to drive you to the emergency room, then you get an appointment the next morning as a walk-in. Like,
Right.
they have their practice set up that way. There aren't that many practices like that in town. And then if you can't get an appointment with your provider, then yes, you're ending up going to the emergency room for something as simple as an earache. Like maybe I could take some ibuprofen tonight, and if I could see my provider in the morning, then I could get, the medication that I need and be okay. But if I can't be seen for 2 weeks, come on, people, of course I'm going to the emergency room.
Right.
I have to work. I have babies. I'm not gonna suffer with an earache for 2 weeks.
And that's the biggest downfall. You hear a lot, too. You'll hear folks talk about the high cost of all the insurances, the Blue Cross, the Cigna, all those insurances that cost so much is because people use the emergency room so much, and it drives up the cost. Because you can't use the emergency room as preventative care or, but if I can't get into my provider, what am I supposed to do,
Exactly. And the other thing is that truly that isn't what it's meant to be. I mean, I worked in healthcare prior to this career path, and the emergency room is meant for emergencies.
Right.
They triage, they take care of the presenting emergency. There is always in your paperwork to follow up with your provider.
Always.
But do our peeps always do that?
No.
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 No, because the issue at hand has been taken care of, and now that issue is no longer an issue, and they just don't have time in their lives with all the other things they're trying to juggle and balance
Right.
to go to the provider.
Well, not to mention if I call my provider and I'm supposed to follow up in a week and my appointment's 4 weeks out, the hell with it.
Right. I got some antibiotics. I'll be
I got
all
the
right.
antibiotics. My ear's going to get better. It's going to be okay.
And I think like day one, I know they accept Medicaid, but I think Grace Health is another one that takes Medicaid, and I know that that's one that.
Careful, Kayla.
Their appointment
It
system
takes a
is
long
hard.
time to get there sometime.
Their
Some-
appointment systems are very,
Yeah.
it's overwhelmed. But
The
in their
system's overwhelmed
defense,
too, in all
Yeah.
fairness.
and in their defense, if 59% of our folks are below poverty level, 60% of our population of Battle Creek, and they are one of the major Medicare providers, imagine how many folks they see on a regular.
Right.
So the reason
They're
it takes
so
so long,
overwhelmed.
it
Yeah.
could be that they are just overwhelmed and they don't have the staff to provide all of that.
Yeah.
all
And there
of that
are
care.
staffing shortages.
Everywhere.
But that system that you're talking about is growing.
Oh, absolutely.
So I think if
Absolutely.
we're growing and they are growing in ways, you're going to get us in trouble. They are growing in ways that are serving the community, putting the pharmacy there, having the health, fresh food initiative.
Yep.
Like lots of things that we talked about this year when it came to Grass Health that we thought was really great. But your patient services maybe not so much when it comes to the health issues.
Right.
Well, yeah.
I just wish a little more focus went there, or we had more providers
Yeah.
that took Medicaid. Let's switch gears for a minute because we're running out of time here, and I really want to hit the housing thing because that has impacted our office so greatly. Like we literally, folks, we have always had constraints when it came to housing, right? It has always been challenging to get someone who has several evictions on their record, or, you know, maybe the transition right now is because they were evicted from the last place. Landlords are not stepping up in a line going, I'll take them. And, you know, if you've been convicted of a felony before and it has something to do with drugs or manufacturing of drugs, I don't blame a landlord for being leery
Right.
about taking you into their property.
Right.
So we've always had these constraints, but they have gotten so great and wide since the pandemic that it's unbelievable to us. We literally have people stacked right now on our case management that need housing, and this is not the case with these folks. Like, they're not littered with evictions. I mean, we're doing what we can. I sit on an advisory committee for Battle Creek Housing Commission. They get A+ from us all day long, so they're amazing. The turnover rate is not that great for them, but they're amazing in the way that they treat their residents. They're amazing in their processes and the things that they're trying to do in the community. And I think even some of their other initiatives, like trying to create a situation where just because you can't participate in the fair market, you don't get substandard housing. You
Right.
get housing just like there is in the fair market at the price that you can afford. It's great, but it's not the answer be all. You know, like they can't answer to everything. And I don't know. I get frustrated when I see another hotel get built, and I'm like, but we need an apartment complex.
Right.
Like, we need more housing.
Yes.
And then it's just the cost of housing. Used to be able to rent a mobile home, 2-bedroom, roughly around $500 to $600. $1,200.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I read in the paper the other day that Southeastern, the one on Gogwek and Washington, was purchased by a development company, and the development company is going to turn it into apartments.
Yay.
No talk of what type of apartments, but they're going to turn it into apartments.
Hopefully affordable.
And I
though.
thought that would be fabulous because it's in the heart of the neighborhood that needs some attention. And maybe that neighborhood can then thrive if there's more families that live there. There's some school systems that are not that far away, and I think it would be a really good plus for that area. And then they bought another building. I'm not sure what building the other one was. They bought another building in the community as well, and they plan on doing it for like $1.5 million worth of renovations and upgrades and making these new apartments.
Wow.
So
hopefully they're like
there's some
median
housing
income or-
that will be available, but
I
think
would
the
hope
other
so,
thing that's
too.
ridiculous too, though, is when we're trying to field one of these apartment complexes, like the bigger ones in Georgetown, and Pine Knolls and some of the others, and you have to make this certain income level.
Yeah.
Is it not ridiculous that the income level is far above poverty level? And
Yeah.
Kayla just gave us the statistic that said 60% of our population lives in poverty.
Well,
Right.
and I
So
think
who
what's
then is able to rent these apartments?
Right.
Are they then affordable?
right, and I think what's really sad about that is this is from 2019, so almost 60% of Battle Creek living under poverty, almost 30%, 28.5 of that poverty is our children from the age 6 and down.
And I mean, okay, so I know that people are trying to do things, but again, we found a boarding house yesterday. That's great. But $700 a month to rent a room. You get to use the kitchen, you get to use the bathroom, and of course your utilities are included, but that doesn't include meals. $700 a month for a room.
Right,
A room.
Right.
And no children.
right.
and no children.
And no children.
And look at
Let's say it again, no children.
Right.
Look at the opportunities that are in our community. I mean, you see for rent, but if I'm working and making, say, I don't know, $13, $14 an hour, and I have to pay rent, utilities, I've automatically disqualified myself. If I have a small family, I'm disqualified myself from any state or federal funding help that I'm going to get. So I'm living off of what I'm making. So to think that someone who makes $13 or $14 an hour can make 3 times the rent at $800 or $900 a month is just ridiculous in our community. We don't live in Grand Rapids where everyone's getting paid $18, $19 an hour to do anything. You
I
know,
mean,
it's-
honestly, could we do it? Like the three of us? Like, I guess I would make enough for some to qualify, but not all. You don't necessarily make enough at an entry-level wage at Women's Co-op to be 3 times the rent as some of these complexes.
Right. And I work full
You would
time.
be ruled out of some.
Yeah.
And you work full-time.
Right.
I have children.
You have children.
Right.
Yeah.
It just seems outrageous to me because, and part of what we're saying is it takes a community to put resources there for people to build resources. And I think all too often we just think that this is because of the behavior of the individuals.
Right.
And we don't focus enough, I don't think, on the policies and resources that community offers that changes and imbalances a lot of these things.
Yeah, I think there's like all the stigma with people in poverty, like they're lazy. We know all of those. Just get a job, and then you would have all ABCD would just fall into your lap.
Yeah, pull yourself up by your bootstraps. Come
Right.
on now.
And then, you asked me, so like I would make barely enough for my children and I work full time. I do what, would be expected of somebody to do to get themselves out of a situation. And then I make just over the line, so I don't get to qualify for food stamps or any of those things. My childcare has been taken back. So like there's this huge inequality. There's this huge middle place that's like not connecting. So it's almost better feels better for some folks to just maybe work a little bit less and share a home with 8 other people where it's crazy, and then that leads all right back to the mental health. And yeah, I think it's all one big circle.
And a lot of your private landlords don't have that restriction where you have to make X amount of dollars, but they're the ones that are really looking at, they can be picky now because the hold that was on being able to evict folks was in place for so long, and so now the court system is backed up with all of the evictions that are coming in. So when I get to court, I haven't been able to pay rent now, and now I'm being evicted. But now on my record, it looks like I potentially could owe $7,000 or $8,000 when I really only owe, you know what I'm saying? Because once you file the paperwork, a lot of private landlords won't take payments at that point because.
Well, and in defense of the private landlords, we had a case yesterday where the person was asking for assistance for $2,000, but then after talking to the landlord, we found out that what they actually owed was, what was it, Val, like $16,000?
$16,000.
Because they hadn't paid the entire time of the
Moratorium or whatever.
moratorium. So, I mean, and also, I mean, we deal with a lot of private landlords too. We have those relationships, and sometimes we look at them and say, why don't they put new carpet in? Why don't they paint? Why don't they fix it up a little bit? Give people a decent place to live. But when I get somebody in there for 6 months who doesn't pay me for 3 months, and then they tear up everything while they're here,
Right.
like, I'm not going to keep making those investments.
Right? Or I get 15 police calls and 45, I mean,
And it's a business, so if
Right.
I've lost all this money during the, say it again?
moratorium.
Right, and I can't go back and collect on that money, I need to get it back and gain it from someplace,
Right.
so I have to raise the rent.
And I mean, some of our private landlords we deal with, if there is an eviction in process or they are evicting one of our tenants, they won't take them to court for a money judgment, which, okay, yeah, they don't have that money judgment on their record now, so they aren't going to lose any money or they're not going to be charged any money. The tenant's not. But think about the landlord. Like you said, it's a business, and now he's losing, or
He loses
she's
all that money.
losing all of that money, because that person lived in their home for free. And then they still have the responsibility of the upkeep of the home, the property taxes, all the other things that fall in with that. So
I think there's another middle piece, because I feel like in situations like these, it's like my landlord's a slumlord. I live in XYZ neighborhood, and like this is what we do, this is how like it goes, that kind of thing. So I think there's like a little bit of a disconnect or maybe trust to necessarily give people in poverty like nice things.
Right.
And and I think that those people in poverty are so used to people not allowing them or giving them a chance to have nice things that I feel like this one was a little bit
Hard to unpack.
Yeah, that one's a hard one to unpack, but there's a little piece that's like missing there in the middle.
I think that what I hear you saying is just because I have to get something given to me because I don't have enough doesn't mean that it should be substandard.
Right.
But you can push back on that argument too, that sometimes when people don't have sweat equity in something and they don't earn something, they don't necessarily
They come
know
with that sense
to
of
take care of
entitlement.
it.
Yeah.
Right.
I mean, when there's something wrong with my house or my car or whatever, my boots, I should show these boots. I have to show these boots. I have to show them. Look at these boots. They're just absolutely fabulous. They're like cheetah print. But if there was something wrong, I could fix it. And I would fix it because I have sweat equity in those. I love them, right? These are my things. And I think that sometimes there is that middle ground where it's like, are they not taking care of it because they just don't know how to appreciate having something nice? Or do they have the inability to fix it or take care of it?
Or is it generational that they've never been taught?
Could be a lot of things.
Yeah.
So, what are we thinking? The state of our community? Do we feel depressed as we leave the table today, or do we feel good?
I think there's a lot of things that are happening in our community that are going to surround folks to let them know that they are cared about. It's just a matter of making that connection.
Yep.
And we talk about this a lot. When you're a person in poverty, or you come up against something that's a barrier to you, it seems so enormous and it seems so hard that you don't even want to try to tackle it. So you just stick your head in the sand and leave it be. And I think there are some resources out there that if we could help folks understand how to navigate through those resources, I think it would be a positive effect for them as well.
I'm excited. I believe in Battle Creek. I think the next even 10 years are going to be amazing.
I agree.
I think I'm with Kayla. I think that I really believe in Battle Creek, and I think part of what makes me really believe in Battle Creek is that we have connections to partners who are alongside us doing this work. We're a part of W.K. Kellogg Foundation-funded Workforce Development Consortium, which encompasses Michigan Works, Kellogg Community College, Goodwill Industries, Community Action Agency, The Village. And, sitting with these leaders and knowing what it is that they're trying to do and connect, there are a lot of good people in Battle Creek who care about these issues. I just think that we don't always know how to address them as a community. So that's why you should be here at 7 o'clock on Monday nights to watch Our View, right? Because we will give you our view from poverty. Because I am a strong believer that it is those voices that are missing from the equation when we're trying to solve this. I think that we all come from different places and have different ideas, and we all experience these problems in a different way, whether we're living them or we're the social workers or providers that are trying to serve them, or we are the people who have the money that are trying to give money to these causes. We're all coming from a different place, and we all have a different voice or a different perception about it. And I think oftentimes wealth is at the head of the table, middle class is at the table, and we forget to include those folks that are in poverty. And maybe it's not that we forget to include them, but it is difficult to include them. But it needs to happen, right? No matter what the issue is. Well, thank you, Battle Creek, for joining us for our 24th episode of Our View. If you go back and watch all 24 of those episodes, I think and believe that we're getting better. We've always got great content, but we work in a nonprofit, and really our job is to help folks. So creating a set, putting a script together, Being politically correct on this show is out of the question because none of us are. We don't have like this big production team behind us. We do have a couple guys in the booth who help us, and they're amazing, who help us produce the show. And thank God for Access Vision. But thanks for joining us.
Yep.
Good night.